Well, welcome everyone. Um, Good morning or good evening, as the case may be. Um, just a note about what we've been doing this year. We've been reading through portions of the Stones of Venice now for a year. Congratulations, everyone, who's been a part of that experience. There's even been an intrepid little group that met on Monday to read all three volumes together these past months, and we have managed it. In a way, we've saved, I think, the best for last. We made Emma and I made an editorial decision some months ago that in the course of looking at volume two of Stones of Venice, we would take out the famous Nature of Gothic, chapter 6, and consider it last in the course of our study as a kind of separate study. Um, and that we would come back after we'd perused all three volumes. We would come back to this central chapter at the end, which we will do this week and finish up next week, next Saturday. Along with Unto This Last in 1860 and perhaps Sesame and Lilies, The Nature of Gothic is probably the most widely read and quoted of all of Ruskin's works, and for good reason. And although it functions in the Stones of Venice as a kind of digression on what Ruskin means by Gothic in the course of his analysis of various Venetian Gothic, what he calls Venetian Gothic buildings, um, it has a standalone quality as a kind of standalone essay, something that William Morris recognized many years later when he published it as a separate booklet with the Kelmscott Press. All of Ruskin's themes are present and integrated in the Nature of Gothic into a whole approach: art criticism, architecture, social reform. It's all there. So this is I was rereading it the other night and realizing there's just no matter how many times you peruse it, there's just so much here that it is a delight to have a opportunity in this next couple of weeks uh, to take a look at it again. So in order to do that, I'm going to turn everything over to uh, Emma Zdeno and Miriam Piluti from the Fors Center at Ca' Foscari University in Venice. Just a quick note about Emma. Uh, she graduated in English language and literature at Ca' Foscari University with an MA in literature and the visual arts at the University of Reading in the UK, and did her PhD at Ca' Foscari University. During her postgraduate studies, she particularly focused on Victorian criticism and John Ruskin's work through a rhetorical approach. Her current interests concern the reception of Ruskin in 20th century France and Italy, and the representation of landscape in modern literature and theory. Currently, she teaches English at Ca' Foscari University, and she has spearheaded with her colleagues the establishment of the Fors Center at Ca' Foscari University, which is a center for Ruskin studies connected to the Department of Linguistics and Comparative Cultural Studies. And we're all very excited about the work of the Fors Center. So without further ado, and Emma, if you could introduce your colleague Miriam, I will turn this now over to you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. It's always a pleasure and an honor in this particular occasion to read with you this chapter, and with Miriam Pilutinamer. Miriam is a colleague, a brilliant colleague and friend of the center, and she's an archaeologist. Her field of research is an archaeologist but with really a very broad approach. She has been teaching and giving lectures. Really, I mean, Miriam also in Beijing, in Japan and US. So he's really an international scholar. So I'm very happy and proud to rely on Miriam collaboration in the center. And so Miriam, are you? I could, I can see you. So
So thank you.
maybe Miriam, can say something
Yeah,
to
can you hear
your.
me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Emma, for this very kind presentation. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. Really, I'm quite impressed of your work. I'm really sorry I've not been able to join you more often. As you know, the center is asking for a lot of engagement from our side. And I'm really excited that we'll meet quite soon because in some weeks, actually in a month, I know that some of you are joining us in Venice. So it'll be a pleasure to welcome you there and to participate in the conference on the perception and experience of the mountains in the Ruskinian atmosphere. That's one of our centers. So thank you also, Emma, for asking for participating. You know that in Italy it's Saturday night, so it's quite, you know, that in Italy this is sort of an institution. So for us it's really, really, yeah, a pleasure and it's definitely something very much exciting being here on a Saturday night in a Ruskinian club. It's really, 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 really happy to be here with you and very eager to listen. Reading the nature of Gothic together. So thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Miriam. I would start with the reading since there is a lot to read and to comment, and therefore very few words on the chapter. As Gabriel has said, this chapter is sort of autonomous chapter in itself, thanks to William Morris, Morris's edition, 1892 edition of the chapter. But it should be remembered that the chapter also appeared in 1854 twice, in two editions, which Ruskin had planned to have. Therefore, it is not just thanks to William Morris that we have this chapter, but before it was already perceived, the self-sufficiency, we can say, of the chapter soon after the publication, as I said, 1854, the publication of the Stones of Venice. And it was, in fact, the money that the publisher, which was Smith and Elder, got from the sale of this chapter went to the Working Men's College. So it was a very successful publication, appeared twice, and the money went to finance the Working Men College, which was in a way the addressee, the first addressee of the work was perceived in this way. So, but we can sorry about the trying to go back to the sorry, to the PowerPoint, which has disappeared, unfortunately. But let's see. We can. Okay. There we are. Sorry. Okay. Yes. Can you see the slide now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, this is an extract. William Morris's chapter, the Nature of Gothic, appeared with a short preface of William Morris, and this preface, as I mean, there is the passage um, I have quoted here is stresses on the pleasure in labor. What Morris emphasizes is exactly the pleasure that the workman um, receives in a way in work according to has to should get from labor according to Ruskin in the Nature of Gothic. All emphasis in the preface is on pleasure. Rejoice in his work. And I'm just quoting and reading. Strange that it may seem to us today, there have been times when he did rejoice in it. And lastly, that unless man's work once again becomes a pleasure to him, the token of which change will be that beauty is once again a natural and necessary accomplishment of productive labor. So William Morris is in fact stressing this aspect. And he also saying that he won't mention the other aspects that are certainly represented in the chapter, that is the ethical aspect and the political aspect that Ruskin also talks about in the chapter, because these, important as they are certainly for Ruskin, they are in a way present throughout his work. And certainly, particularly in Unto This Last. But in this chapter, according to Morris, in this chapter, the emphasis is particularly on the aesthetic qualities of the Gothic and the pleasure that the workman gets. So he is, in a way, we can say, focusing particularly on this aspect. And Francis O'Gorman has also noticed that that Morris is in fact obfuscating, is not mentioning the aspect that, as we know, is very important for Ruskin, which is the Christian, the religious, the spiritual aspect. So in Morris, the emphasis is particularly, as we said, about the artistic and the aesthetic quality. But as we will see in reading the chapter is much richer, we can say, and full of those elements that for Ruskin were important. So I would start with the reading of our chapter, and starting with paragraph 1. And for this, I'm asking who is volunteering for reading this chapter, this paragraph. Sorry. Maybe Gabriel can start.
Sure, I'll start.
Thank you.
If the reader will look back to the division of our subject, which was made in the first chapter of the first volume, he will find that we are now about to enter upon the examination of that school of Venetian architecture which forms an intermediate step between the Byzantine and Gothic forms, but which I find may be conveniently considered in its connection with the latter style. In order that we may discern the tendency of each step of this change, it will be wise, in the outset, to endeavor to form some general idea of its final result. We know already what the Byzantine architecture is, from which the transition was made, but we ought to know something of the Gothic architecture into which it led. I shall endeavor, therefore, to give the reader in this chapter an idea at once broad and definite of the true nature of Gothic architecture, properly so called, not of that of Venice only, but of universal Gothic, for it will be one of the most interesting parts of our subsequent inquiry to find out how far Venetian architecture reached the universal or perfect type of Gothic, and how far it either fell short of it or assumed foreign and independent forms.
Thank you. Thank you. We can perhaps continue to read some
Sure.
of the second paragraph.
Bernard, you want to?
Bernie,
All right.
yes.
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
Yes. The principal difficulty in doing this arises from the fact that every building of the Gothic period differs in some important respect from every other, and many include features which, if they occurred in other buildings, would not be considered Gothic at all, so that all we have to reason upon is merely, if I may be allowed so to express it, a greater or lesser degree of Gothicness in each building we examine. And it is this Gothicness, the character which, according as it is found more or less in a building, makes it more or less Gothic, of which I want to define the nature. And I feel the same kind of difficulty in doing so which would be encountered by anyone who undertook to explain, for instance, the nature of redness, without any actually red thing to point to, but only orange and purple things. Suppose he had only a piece of heather and a dead oak leaf to do it with. He might say that the color is mixed with the yellow in this oak leaf and with the blue in this heather, would be red if you had it separate. But it would be difficult, nevertheless, to make the abstraction perfectly intelligible. And it is so in a far greater degree to make the abstraction of the Gothic character intelligible, because that character itself is made up of many mingled ideas, and can consist only in their union. That is to say, pointed arches do not constitute Gothic, nor vaulted roofs, nor flying buttresses, nor grotesque sculptures, but all or some of these things, and many other things with them, when they come together so as to have life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Emma, I could make a comment there.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Okay. So I think all of us know that Mr. Ruskin was a deep student of Plato. And as it happens in my own life, particularly my teaching life, I got to teach a lot of Plato. And one of Plato's great contributions to intellectual life throughout the centuries has been what is called his theory of the forms. And the theory of the forms is really quite simple. All things have a form. A chair has a form. A tree has a form. A car has a form. The grass itself has a form. And any given instance of a chair, a tree, a car, whatever, is a more or less realized or more or less perfect instance of the form. We come to know the essence of the thing by analyzing the form and how much of the essence of the quality of the form is present in it. So this word Gothicness is important because it means, exactly as Ruskin is telling us, he being a great student of Plato, although he doesn't use Plato here or specify him specifically, he intends us to think about some buildings have more Gothicness and others have less. This quality, the grotesque sculpture, whatever the pointed arch, whatever we're talking about, is a characteristic often associated with Gothic, and but the fact that a building has it does not make it Gothic. It has a certain degree of Gothicness. A human being has a certain amount of human beingness. And of course, we're looking for in our own lives the ways to actualize our humanness in such a way that we're closer to the sort of ideal of what a human would be. Same would be true of a Turner painting. A Turner painting has so much of the wonder wonderful constituent elements of Turner's art in it. But not all paintings of Turner's have all of those arts. I mean, all of those elements. I'm sorry. So the point that I want us to think about is that this chapter, these characteristics of Gothic that he's about to talk about in great detail, are in fact the essential qualities of Gothic, which exist in more or less degree in various instances of buildings. And that's what he's getting us to think about. Gothic ness, tree ness, automobile ness, Turner painting ness. There's so much of it in it, and when we come to know what the ness, so to speak, is, we get to know the essence of the thing. That is the theory of the form. The forms exist in nature. There are millions of them, and we get to know the essence of reality as we understand the quality of these forms. So he's trying to make us aware that Gothic is a form of architecture. And once we get a grasp of what the essential and constituent elements of that form are, we will come to understand the nature of Gothic itself. The whole chapter, to me at least, is very much about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Is there anyone who would like to add or to say
Yes,
something? Yes,
as
thank
a
you.
matter of fact, I would. I agree with Professor Spates that Ruskin is deeply indebted to Plato with the concepts of forms and the seeking for the understanding of the form. I would also, however, add that he is indebted to Aristotle and Aristotle's scientific approach, his process of analysis, of looking at the individual parts. And as I hope that we will find in this, he leads us on an examination of what he considers to be the 6 characteristics of Gothicness.
Thank you. It's also interesting that what he says, I mean, in the search for the Gothicness of, and as Jim Spates has pointed out, I mean, Ruskin is forging, in a way, words, substantive words, nouns from adjectives. That we have a lot of these ness words in his work. In the search for the say the essence, as he rightly says. And here he says, however, that the quality, the essence of Gothic is in the union of some characters, is putting together some elements, some various elements, which is also I think interesting. Looking for various elements composing Gothic. Just an assemblage of elements in a way. Perhaps we can go on and up to paragraph 5 and continue reading. Is any Jim? Perhaps would you like to continue reading, Jim? Please.
Yes, of course. Chapter paragraph 5.
Paragraph 5.
Okay.
Yes.
Let us go back for a moment to our chemistry and note that in defining a mineral by its constituent parts, it is not one or the other of them that can make up the mineral, but the union of all, as Emma just said. For instance, it is neither in charcoal nor in oxygen nor in lime that there is the making of chalk, but in the combination of all 3 in certain measures. They are all found in very different things from chalk, and there is nothing like chalk either in charcoal or in oxygen, but they are nevertheless necessary to its existence. So, in the various mental characteristics which make up the soul of Gothic, wonderful phrase that, it is not one or another that produces it, it is their union in certain measures. Each one of them is found in many other architectures beside Gothic, but Gothic cannot exist anywhere where they are not found, or at least where place is not in some way supplied. Only there is this great difference between the composition of the mineral and the architectural style, that if we withdraw one of its elements from the stone, its form is utterly changed, and its existence as such is such a mineral is destroyed. But if we withdraw one of the mental elements from the Gothic style, it is only a little less Gothic than it was before. And the union of the two or three of its elements is already to bestow a certain Gothicness of character, which gains in intensity as we add the others and loses as we again withdraw them. Here, I'm pausing for a moment. Here, he is talking about what many people will talk about as they think about the nature of these things, the system of the thing. It is the system of the thing which is the whole. But you take one element out, or you move one element around, or if one element is not present, it changes the very nature of the thing. So you can't take an arm away from a human being and have the full human being. You can't take the chlorophyll out of the grass and have the same kind of grass. It is a system of elements in union together. That's the key element that he's trying to get us to think about here. So Gothicness is all of these elements present in more or less intensity in any given building. Emma, go ahead.
Thank,
What do you want us to
yes,
do?
let's go ahead with number 6. Maybe Miriam can read paragraph 6. Thank you.
I believe then that the characteristic or moral elements of Gothic are the following, placed in the order of their importance. First, savageness. Second, changefulness. Third, naturalism. 4, grotesqueness. 5, rigidity. 6, redundance. These characters are here expressed as belonging to the building. As belonging to the builder, they will be expressed thus. First, savageness or rudeness. Second, love of change. Third, love of nature. 4, disturbed imagination. 5, obstinacy. 6, generosity. And I repeat that the withdrawal of anyone or any two will not at once destroy the Gothic character of a building, but the removal of a majority of them will. I shall proceed to examine them in the order.
Yes.
First, savageness. I'm not sure when the word Gothic was first generally applied to the architecture of the North, but I presume that, whatever the date of its original usage, it was intended to imply reproach and express the barbaric character of the nations among whom that architecture arose. It never implied that they were literally of Gothic lineage, far less that the architecture had been originally invented by the Goths themselves. But it did imply that they in the buildings together exhibited a degree of sternness and rudeness which, in contradistinction to the character of southern and eastern nations, appear like a perpetual reflection of the contrast between the Goth and the Roman in the first encounter. And when that fallen Roman, in the utmost impotence of his luxury and insolence of his guilt, became the model for the imitation of civilized Europe at the close of the so-called Dark Ages, the word Gothic became a term of unmitigated contempt, not unmixed with aversion. From that contempt, by the exertion of the antiquaries and architects of this century, Gothic architecture has been sufficiently vindicated, and perhaps some among us, in our admiration of the magnificent science of its structure and sacredness of its expression, might desire that the term of ancient reproach should be withdrawn, and some other of more apparent honorableness adopted in its place. There is no chance, there is no need, of such a substitution. As far as the epithet was used scornfully, it was used falsely, but there is no reproach in the word, rightly understood. On the contrary, there's a profound truth which the instinct of mankind almost unconsciously recognizes. It's true, greatly and deeply true. The architecture of the North is rude and wild, but it is not true that for this reason we are to condemn it or despise. Far otherwise. I believe it is in this very character that it deserves our profoundest reverence.
Thank you. Thank you. So, he is introducing this character of Gothic. The interesting, well, many interesting things, but he is also stating that Gothic has no lineage. In a way, when we have also read the Torcello chapter, the beginning, in a way, of Venice, the sense of not having an origin, but that this, according to Ruskin, this art is the result of a series of fragments, of series of uh, mm, of remains, we can say, of a previous art. So it's an art made, as I said, a union of bits and fragments. So this is my my impression of the chapter. I don't know what you think, and if you want to add something about this.
Well, I would add this, that he's quite right, and he begins to tackle from the very first the idea that Gothic is something lesser, something reprehensible, something rude, something that we shouldn't spend a lot of time with. I certainly have found this over the course of my own life. I don't know what others who are here today would say to this, but certainly when I go talk to people about Ruskin, saying he was a great champion of Gothic architecture, almost immediately they think he must be in some way unimportant, mistaken, out of tune, anachronistic, whatever, because the word Gothic still contains, in my view, this negative concept of something immature, something less powerful, less important, something that we don't need to spend a lot of time on because we now understand things so much better. It's still a very present element in the culture, in my experience. I don't know what others think of that.
I think that the Goth they were workers at the Roman Empire, and when the Roman Empire collapsed, those persons that belonged to the Goth, they were rude, but they suddenly they could have liberty to create the first time. And I think the Gothic is the this kind of Gothicness has a little to do with this, the liberty to create, different from the Roman and different from the Greek, that was just pure mathematics.
Yeah, it seems that anytime Ruskin does this introduction, he's really getting into defining terms and making sure reoriented. Because coming into this, I'm sure if I spoke to any friend about Gothic architecture and showed him this, as I think Jim Spates was saying, is what are you talking about? This is not what I would think of when I think of Gothic. And going back to this idea of ideas or forms, it seems that in Ruskin, you to take one or two of these out of the equation may or may not affect Gothic architecture, but true Gothicness is in the relationship with the architecture and the human worker.
Mhm.
May I add to this? I'm sad I got here slightly late. Um, thank you very much, Joseph, because it was that reflection that encouraged me to sort of say, um, those who have read Ruskin much more than I, my question uh, is there some respect, is there some recognition of the quality of light in Venice? That to the most, it seemed to me, the most naive viewer, visitor, this is absolutely overwhelming. The minute, whether it is the evening or the morning or the day, that the light is so significant. And then you see it actually immediately, then you say, now I understand the paintings. You know, you see them in the museums, right? And then you're there, oh, this is why the light is this way.
Mhm.
Now, the Venetian Gothic, to me, a medievalist, but basically the French tradition, is that it is so sensitive to the surface and to interaction, as you said, Joseph, interaction with the viewer. The Northern Gothic, as Viollet-le-Duc immediately described it about the same time, going back to the Goths, and he loved the name, is a sort of architectural, so we say sculptural production. And he starts out, Viollet-le-Duc starts out talking about how the Goths were building out of wood and were bending forms. And therefore, of course, he then theorized that this is the concept of the vault and all of this, you know, kind of pointed vault that becomes synonymous with Gothic. But that is in no way the Venetian, the Italian experience. There's imported Gothicness in Milan, of course, but that's rather Germanic. That comes down in a different way and much later. But so it's that extraordinary sensitivity to the way light plays across the surface and the use of polychrome that just and the repetition of pattern and then the surprise in a way, human scale interaction as someone turns a corner and there you are and you're looking at a facade. So that is, shall we say, a kind of contrast memory of experience, but then trying to get a little bit more profound and actually more profound, more what can I say, sophisticated in reading how Ruskin worked this material. I mean, of course, you all know how immensely popular the Ruskinian Gothic or Victorian Gothic was, no, excuse me, Venetian Gothic was in Massachusetts, especially Boston with Harvard University's construction and the first generation of the Museum of Fine Arts was in a Ruskinian Gothic.
Mhm.
We still have the new Old South Church built in the 1870s on Copley Square that is a superb example of this transplanted effort to look at Ruskin and make and take his advice as a way to build a building that has interaction and connection to people. So at any rate, this is very fascinating and I'm learning a lot from you.
One of the
Thank you.
interesting things too, I think, is that uh, as always with Ruskin, when he's in the midst of setting up an argument, he's in no hurry. He's building almost architecturally. He's building his argument architecturally, and in 8 we go on to this magnificent set piece where he talks about the what we might even call the meteorological and geographic realities out of which architecture grows. He places it, you know, in this in this huge context, bird's eye view, quite literally, of Europe. In one of the great set pieces of many in the nature of Gothic, that's section 8.
Yes, Gabriel, would you like to read that long passage?
Oh, I would be honored to do that.
Thank you.
The charts of the world, which have been drawn up by modern science, have thrown into a narrow space the expression of a vast amount of knowledge, but I have never yet seen anyone pictorial enough to enable the spectator to imagine the kind of contrast in physical character which exists between northern and southern countries. We know the differences in detail, but we have not that broad glance and grasp which would enable us to feel them in their fullness. We know that gentians grow on the Alps and olives on the Apennines, but we do not enough conceive for ourselves that variegated mosaic of the world's surface which a bird sees in its migration. That difference between the district of the gentian and of the olive which the stork and the swallow see far off as they lean upon the sirocco wind. Let us, for a moment, try to raise ourselves even above the level of their flight and imagine the Mediterranean lying beneath us like an irregular lake, and all its ancient promontories sleeping in the sun. Here and there an angry spot of thunder, a gray stain of storm moving upon the burning field. And here and there a fixed wreath of white volcano smoke surrounded by its circle of ashes. But for the most part, a great peacefulness of light. Syria and Greece, Italy and Spain, laid like pieces of a golden pavement into the sea blue, chased as we stoop nearer to them with bossy, beaten work of mountain chains, and glowing softly with terraced gardens, and flowers heavy with frankincense, mixed among masses of laurel and orange and plummy plum, and that abate with their gray-green shadows the burning of the marble rocks, and of the ledges of porphyry sloping under lucent sand. Then let us pass farther toward the north until we see the orient colors change gradually into a vast belt of rainy green, where the pastures of Switzerland and poplar valleys of France and dark forests of the Danube and Carpathians stretch from the mouths of the Loire to that of the Volga, seen through clefts and gray swirls of rain cloud and flaky veils of the mist of the brooks, spreading low along the pasture lands. And then, farther north still, to see the earth heave into mighty masses of leaden rock and heathy moor, bordering with a broad waste of gloomy purple that belt of field and wood, and splintering into irregular and grisly islands amid the northern seas, beaten by storm and chilled by ice drift, and tormented by furious pulses of contending tide, until the roots of the last forests fail from among the hill ravines, and the hunger of the north wind bites their peaks into barrenness, and at last the wall of ice, durable like iron, sets deathlike its white teeth against us out of the polar twilight.
That sounds like something out of Game of Thrones right there at the end.
Whoa. Wow.
Yes.
I certainly have to say that this and so much of what we're reading today is just Ruskin at his absolute zenith. It is just beautiful. It is so wonderful to even, I just close my eyes and listen to Gabriel read this. These images are astonishing. These word placements are astonishing. It is why we love Ruskin. As Emma said earlier, why we get the pleasure out of the doing of this, the great pleasure of reading these words and being moved by them. This bird's eye view is just one of the great pieces of
Really.
all English literature as I know it.
Yes. What is particularly also interesting for me and beautiful is his inclusive glance. So he's really moving away from that counterposition, that contrast he has mentioned before between south and north, the characteristic of southern countries and northern countries. He's moving away from that, and he is really looking at the map of Europe and more than Europe. I mean,
Northern Africa.
in a wider way. So I think that really this is a wonderful glance of the traveler in a way, but the traveler in a drone, as it has been rightly said. Yeah, so moving away from that contrast between two different arts, the art of the North and also the neoclassical of the South, sorry, neoclassical art, and the art of the North, the Gothic. So is leading us to another way of looking at this land, this variegated land, and multicolored in different lights, and different animals, and different. The variety, I would say, is here brilliantly represented. I thought of sharing just an attempt. So let's say can you still see something I no
You need
no
to share.
I haven't shared. I am not sharing. Sorry, I thought I was sharing. I can't. Yes, sorry. Okay.
Before sharing,
Yes, yes, thank you.
Victoria would like to say something, I guess.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't know I could unmute myself.
Yeah, no, go ahead with your
Thank you.
observation,
Thank you.
your comments.
I just wanted to make an observation. My late husband, Konrad Oberhuber, who was a renowned art historian, his specialty was the Renaissance, but he was a connoisseur of old master drawings, so he basically spanned the history of Western art as we know it. But he, when he taught Renaissance art, he would but this also applies, I think he would apply it to every period, actually. He had this theory of regional styles, and he always emphasized that the South was sort of the world of the human being, the human figure. And so classicism, as it was apprehended, particularly in his case, talking about the Renaissance, was focused on the beautiful proportions of the human figure, and he sort of set that up in contrast to the North, where he said the North was the region of the word, and which I won't digress. That's a huge subject in itself. But he felt it was no coincidence that so many well, I won't go there. But that it was also the region of the world of nature. And so this whole exposition by Ruskin that's so beautiful and eloquent about the beauties of nature, I think is a perfect reflection of that, because this idea of the Gothic, according to the parameters that Ruskin has set up, that when I think artists through the centuries observed those qualities in nature, and so the focus turning towards nature as opposed to the human figure, and we see that especially in the Renaissance with artists like Albrecht Dürer, et cetera, and the other Northern artists who were quite awkward in their depiction of the human body, because they also had certain moral compunctions or whatever, that not using the nude model. And whereas in Italy and in the South, there was the glory of the human figure in its perfect proportions. So anyway, this just occurred to me with this passage, how Ruskin is actually using examples from nature to illustrate his point about what constitutes the Gothic.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, the chapter in itself, the title of the chapter, The Nature of Gothic, we normally tend to think that it's the characteristic of Gothic, nature in the sense of But in fact, since Ruskin was always very subtle in shaping, in writing his title, and his titles have several meanings, as we know, for Forced Claviger and so on, the nature of Gothic should also be read as the nature of Gothic, not just the characteristics of Gothic, but the nature, the natural element in Gothic. So
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
you.
I completely agree. Thank you.
Thank you. What I thought of show. Sorry. Yes. Sorry.
No, I just quickly add to that. I'm so happy to meet you, Victoria. Konrad Oberhuber is deeply, deeply remembered. Great, great art historian. That Charles Rufus Morey saw exactly the same thing. This great, the emphasis on the figure, the sculptural, and the symmetrical as being the heritage of the South, as in the classical world. The North, the Gothic we're talking about, okay, is the Celtic energy, the barbarian tribes that moved, that carried things with them, and their great possessions were personal adornment. And he saw there the motif, not the palmet, which he saw as the South, which was symmetrical, sculptural, natural, and we say visually real, meaning closer to what the visual would be, but the energy, and he called it the Celtic spiral. And that's the issue again of the manuscript of the word, in which this abstraction of the word, which big example, very simple, the frontispiece of the Book of Kells. It sums up exactly what we're talking about this energy of the North. And that, the more I'm thinking, what you said, is that this leads to this understanding of the surface, the energy and movement across the surface that we're seeing him talk about. So, any rate, very thrilling, and please carry on.
Good. Can I say something about nature?
Sure.
When in the other pages before he was talking about combination, union, combination, union of energy, and that reminds me the law of help, the law that sustains nature, and he transmit that law of help from nature to architecture. So you have a piece that transmit energy to the other one, that transmit to the other one, to the other one, till it goes to the ground and disappears. And that's the structure of Gothic. It's all you can see it. You can even feel that energy coming from one part to the other. That's the law of nature. Sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
The law of nature in which we should rejoice and have great reverence, he says a little bit further on in this same paragraph. We didn't quite finish it. If you have the library edition, I'm on page 187 and about three-quarters of or halfway down a little bit more. And he writes this, and I think it's just beautiful about this whole idea of the nature. Let us not condemn, but rejoice. Remember, Ruskin always chooses every word with great, great intent, but rejoice in the expression of man, of his own rest in the statutes of the lands that gave him birth. Let us watch him with reverence, beautiful word, as he sets side by side the burning gems and smooths with soft sculpture the jasper pillows that are to reflect a ceaseless sunshine and rise into a cloudless sky. But not with less reverence, let us stand by him when, with rough strength and hurried stroke, he smites an uncouth animation out of the rocks, which he has torn from among the moss of the moorland. That's probably enough. But I mean, the idea that I wanted to just underscore here is what he's going to talk about next is changefulness. And he's sort of outlining here with a wonderful, absolutely stunning bit of prose the variety and the beauty and the complexity of the earth, which we should reverence. It's a great Ruskinian belief, and it is beautifully expressed here.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought just of sharing with you this map of that, because Ruskin was passionate, was really in drawing maps. And this is a very early map, a map he drew when he was 10 years old, a map of Europe. And of course, that map making is involved in the chapter we have read, is part of the his way of imagining, of visualizing, visualizing Europe. And this is a picture which the daguerreotype he took. Actually, he took a couple of the daguerreotype, two of Fribourg in 1854 or 1856, which is a bird's eye view. And so his interest, of course, as we have, Joseph, I think, has just said, a drone. He would have loved to have a drone, but there were no drones at the time. But he tried with the mechanical tools that he had at the time, that is the daguerreotypes, to take views from the top of cities, and to have a broad view of spaces, of this geographical, so having these geographical glances. Yes, I thought that these images were quite impressive. We can perhaps continue and read paragraph 9. Is there a volunteer? Someone happy to read?
If no one else will.
Tyson?
Oh, it's
Tyson, yes. Thank you.
Okay. If, however, the savageness of Gothic architecture, merely as an expression of its origin among northern nations, may be considered, in some sort, a noble character, it possesses a higher nobility still, when considered as an index, not of climate, but of religious principle. In the 13th and 14th paragraphs of chapter 21 of the first volume of this work, it was noticed that the systems of architectural ornament, properly so called, might be divided into three. 1. Servile ornament, in which the execution or power of the inferior workman is entirely subjected to the intellect of the higher. 2. Constitutional ornament, in which the executive inferior power is, to a certain point, emancipated and independent, having a will of its own, yet confessing its inferiority and rendering obedience to higher power. And 3. Revolutionary ornament, in which no executive inferiority is admitted at all. I must here explain the nature of these divisions at somewhat greater length. Do you want me to stop there?
Well, the next paragraph is also important, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of servile ornament, the principal schools are the Greek, Ninevite, and Egyptian, but their servility is of different kinds. The Greek master workman was far advanced in knowledge and power above the Assyrian or Egyptian. Neither he nor those for whom he worked could endure the appearance of imperfection in anything. And therefore, what ornament he appointed to be done by those beneath him was composed of mere geometrical forms, balls, ridges, and perfectly symmetrical foliage, which could be executed with absolute precision by line and rule, and were as perfect in their way when completed as his own figure sculpture. The Syrian and Egyptian, on the contrary, less cognizant of accurate form in anything, were content to allow their figure sculpture to be executed by inferior workmen, but lowered the method of its treatment to a standard which every workman could reach, and then trained him by discipline so rigid that there was no chance of his falling beneath the standard appointed. The Greek gave to the lower workman no subject which he could not perfectly execute. The Assyrian gave him subjects which he could only execute imperfectly, but fixed a legal standard for his imperfection. The workman was, in both systems, a slave.
Thank you. Thank you. This is his main point about slavery of the classical workman, and in a way he is challenging I would say quite widespread or consolidated view of Greek art as as the art of freedom, which was, if Miriam can perhaps perhaps confirm, according to Winkelmann, was a contrast to, Greek art against Assyrian and Egyptian. Assyrian and Egyptian were seen as the art of slavery, whereas the art of Greece was the art of freedom. So Ruskin is putting these all together and contrasting them to northern art. So the Gothic. So he is really, making a very strong statement at the time.
Is the revolutionary ornament of work made with pleasure or not?
Pardon, sorry.
Is it work made with pleasure? The revolutionary.
The pleasure, but also the fact that he is saying that the art of Greece was the product of slavery.
Yes.
Because it was generally known, and Winkelmann and I think Hegel too was, saying that the art in Greece, the classical art in Greece, was the product of the freedom of the artist. Was the artist living in a society where there was, the freedom to express himself. And Ruskin is saying that art is the product of slavery because they were slaves. So and associating that art to Assyrian and Egyptian, which were normally distinguished from the Greek art.
Yeah, if I might say something.
Yes, please.
This is very, at this point, this is definitely revolutionary for an art critic, and it's very much contemporary art critics, because Ruskin is not saying that Greek art is, let's say, ugly or is indifferent to Greek art, but is very much eroding at the roots that society that was contemplating Greek art as the art of masterpieces, the art that you should collect. So it's very much contemporary art critics in saying that Greek art is the art of slaves. And also, we should not forget that he was looking to Greek art from the perspective of someone who, precisely as Winkelmann, has never experienced in his own life authentic Greek art. So it was just the arts, the Greek art that was collected by the nobles and the aristocrats, so was restored and was selected by the ones they were collecting. So it was not Greek art from excavations or Greek art from fragments that were then reassembled. It was the Greek art that was on display in the collections, mainly of the aristocrats, of course, and the kings and the emperors. So it's very much critics about, is contemporary society saying these values are not the values we share, and the values I do promote are the ones from the north. The brutal northerners is often saying the brutal northerners who anyone, I think no one nowadays can say that the Northerners are rude, right? I definitely, but actually, I think he was also feeling that he was saying something really, really strong, really revolutionary in art critics, especially. So maybe sometimes the emphasis is because he was really fighting as a Don Quixote alone against the social taste that was definitely still very much fond of the Greeks and neoclassical art and neoclassical architecture, and was collecting massively this kind of even the neoclassical sculpture, so the new trend and the arts. And I would say that he was also the first of the contemporary art critics, because then after Ruskin, apart from a very little time under the two regimes, the Nazi and the fascist regime, actually the classes were definitely declining. So it was the very first one, the very first contemporary art critic saying this freedom will be the one that we will love in the arts. So I think this passage was crucial. So thank you. Me too. I was inspired.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Miriam.
Well, also, I think it's really significant that here he starts this movement away from the question of style to the question of the social system that created it.
Yeah.
So now we not only get an analysis of who made these buildings and under what conditions were these made, but then we get, of course, his shift from a consideration, again, of architectural style to his critique. He's building this critique of the treatment of the worker, where we begin to see the nature of the work and the nature of the treatment of the worker connected to his analysis of these styles.
Yes, yes, definitely. And it calls directly into cause the contemporary reader, the contemporary English reader. It becomes in a way responsible for the condition of the workman, the present time workman. We can perhaps continue reading paragraph 10. Perhaps Joseph, would you like to read? Are you happy to read? Thank you.
Victoria I believe, had a question.
Just
Oh,
sorry,
yes. Okay.
just briefly before we go on, because I think it's interesting that if the comment with the footnote with the asterisk under that paragraph that we just finished, where he refers to the third kind of ornament, the Renaissance, and it's very interesting to read how he is already kind of foreshadowing this how in the Renaissance it moves to a very different social structure in terms of how the workshops of the artists are functioning. And I immediately thought, reading this little footnote, of the collaboration between in the loggia in the Vatican and other places, the collaboration, for example, between Raphael and Giovanni da Udine, who was an accomplished nature painter. And so Raphael, but he gave full deference to Giovanni da Udine as a collaborator and not a slave in that sense, that he acknowledged that Giovanni da Udine was a much greater painter of nature, still lifes, essentially. So he was entrusted with all the nature frescoes that surrounded the figures. And then actually that model continued on into the Baroque with, for example, with Rubens and Jan Bruegel, who again was an accomplished nature painter, and Rubens didn't feel he had the skill or the patience to do these, these paintings of like the Virgin Mary surrounded by a kind of still life frame with flowers and plants. So anyway, it's just, I hope it's not a digression, but I thought that was a beautiful, Ruskin's are looking ahead at how this whole dynamic shifts over time. and that requirement that those, as he says, the executor of every minor portion being required to exhibit skill and possess knowledge as great as that which is possessed by the master of the design. So that is definitely borne out in the Renaissance and the Baroque. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Victoria. Okay. Joseph?
Yeah. So section 10.
Thank you.
But in the medieval, or especially Christian system of ornament, this slavery is done away with altogether. Christianity having recognized in small things as well as great the individual value of every soul. But it not only recognizes its value, it confesses its imperfection, and only bestowing dignity upon the acknowledgement of unworthiness. That admission of lost power and fallen nature, which the Greek or Ninevite felt to be intensely painful and, as far as might be, altogether refused, the Christian makes daily and hourly, contemplating the fact of it without fear, as tending in the end to God's greater glory. Therefore, to every spirit which Christianity summons to her service, her exhortation is this: do what you can and confess frankly what you are unable to do. Neither let your effort be shortened for a fear of failure, nor your confession silenced for fear of shame. And it is perhaps the principal admirableness of the Gothic schools of architecture that they thus receive the results of the labor of inferior minds, and out of fragments full of imperfection, and betraying that imperfection in every touch, indulgently raise up a stately and unaccusable whole.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Thank you for allowing me to read that.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you.
There follows here the great explication of the nature and necessity of imperfection in art and in life.
Yeah. We can perhaps continue to the next paragraph, which is which expands, say, on that issue of perfection. I don't know. I don't see all the names of the.
I think Bernard offered to read.
Victoria, perhaps. Oh, Bernie, yeah. Also,
would you prefer Victoria or me?
no, don't ask me this.
Well, I'll be happy to read this next one.
This one, the number 1, 11. Okay, so
11,
please
yes.
do. Yes, please do.
Yes, but the modern English mind has this much in common with that of the Greek, that it intensely desires in all things the utmost completion or perfection compatible with their nature. This is a noble character in the abstract. It becomes ignoble when it causes us to forget the relative dignities of that nature itself, and to prefer the perfectness of the lower nature to the imperfection of the higher, not considering that as, judged by such a rule, all the brute animals would be preferable to man, because more perfect in their functions and kind, and yet are always held inferior to him. So also in the works of man, those which are more perfect in their kind are always inferior to those which are, in their nature, liable to more faults and shortcomings. For the finer the nature, the more flaws it will show through the clearness of it. And it is a law of this universe that the best things shall be seldomest seen in their best form. The wild grass grows well and strongly one year with another, but the wheat is, according to the greater nobleness of its character, liable to the bitterer blight. And therefore, while in all the things that we see and do, we are to desire perfection and strive for it, we are nevertheless not to set the meaner thing in its narrow accomplishment above the nobler thing in its mighty progress, not to esteem smooth minuteness above shattered majesty, not to prefer mean victory to honorable defeat, not to lower the level of our aim, that we may the more surely enjoy the complacency of success. But above all, in our dealings with the souls of other men, we are to take care how we check, by severe requirement or narrow caution, efforts which might otherwise lead to a noble issue, and still more, how we withhold our admiration from great excellencies, because they are mingled with rough faults. Now, in the make and nature of every man, however rude or simple, whom we employ in manual labor, there are some powers for better things, some tardy imagination, torpid capacity of emotion, tottering steps of thought. There are, even at the worst. And in most cases, it is all our own fault that they are tardy or torpid. But they cannot be strengthened unless we are content to take them in their feebleness, and unless we prize and honor them in their imperfection above the best and most perfect manual skill. And this is what we have to do with all our laborers, to look for the thoughtful part of them and get that out of them, whatever we lose for it, whatever faults and errors we are obliged to take with it. For the best that is in them cannot manifest itself, but in company with much error. Understand this clearly. You can teach a man to draw a straight line and to cut one, to strike a curved line and to carve it, and to copy and draw any number of given lines or forms with admirable speed and perfection, and you find his work perfect of its kind. But if you ask him to think about any of those forms, to consider if he cannot find any better in his own head, he stops. His execution becomes hesitating. He thinks, and 10 to 1 he thinks wrong. 10 to 1 he makes a mistake with the first touch he gives to his work as a thinking being. But you have made a man of him for all that. He was only a machine before, an animated tool.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, great.
Indeed wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Bernard.
Absolutely wonderful. I know we're getting close to the time, so I wanted what you made me think about. This passage made me think about. I hope this group might be able to quickly look, it's online, at Theophilus's On the Divers Arts. It's an extremely well-known early 12th century Latin treatise, short, and usually it's cited because it talks about metalworking, painting, and glass, making stained glass windows. But it's the introduction that should be read by absolutely everyone, because it actually is a counter to Bernard of Clairvaux's discussion that monks shouldn't engage in making beautiful things, and this is okay, is what he prizes, which is exactly what we heard here, is free will. That the workman has free will, and we've lost everything with the fall. God has given us free will, and we are behaving in the most godlike, what can I say, honorable manner if we strive, even through our imperfections, right, to create. And that's what I heard here, the same thing.
Very good, Virginia. Very good.
Virginia, I would appreciate it if you would cite that in the chat notes, so that we might.
Okay. I definitely will.
This is something of Boethius, Virginia, yes?
Or send us
yes, well, Boethius also. But this
send us a link to the text.
I will. I will send you a link to the text.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Virginia. That's great. But could I just ask, when Ruskin is thinking about we, and when he's thinking about the you, the laborer, to whom is he referring? And what experience does he have?
Yeah, it is very interesting. Yes, Nicholas, it is very interesting, your question, because at some point it shifts to we, and we are English, we modern English people who are asking the laborer to be perfect, and so on. We are treating them as slaves. So we are the slavers.
So we are the middle class employers.
Exactly. Yes.
But what experience did Ruskin actually have of watching a manual worker at his or her trade that gave him this belief that that these were people who were enslaved and who needed to be liberated by the middle class, the middle class of imagination, the people that Ruskin is preaching to, and then they will be saved by us. It's as if they're being redeemed from the horrors of their life by us, we, the middle class. So it seems to me it's wonderful writing, don't get me wrong, but it's another instance of the quite extraordinarily patronizing tone that Ruskin assumes with regard to laborers.
If I may, it all depends on what do we understand when he says slavery.
Say it again, Joseph. Whether we understand
what we understand
what we understand
when he says slavery. I think that's going to depend.
Yes, but his implication in this passage is that people are inclined just to continue with their slavery until they are asked to stop voluntarily and think about what they do, and then they will be raised to another level of consciousness. But
which level of consciousness they already have in them, but they have not been allowed to express.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Not allowed to express.
Yeah, and I don't think that Ruskin, in fact, I think what Ruskin is saying, in effect, is the imperfection and the freedom of these workers is, in fact, the requisite for great art. So it's not a matter of the worker rising to the level of the middle class.
No, not at all. No,
the worker then becomes, in a way, a revelatory
and an artist.
Yes, and a revolutionary.
Yes,
figure
yes,
in that sense.
Yes, and of course this was hugely influential on the arts and crafts movement, on Ashby's notion that he could take a man wheeling a cat's meat barrow down the streets of the East End of London and make him into a metal worker.
Well, I think it also comes too from his, where he was in direct contact with workers, of course, was with the Working Men's College.
Yes, but he wasn't watching them work.
That's true. But I think he was aware that in teaching them drawing, he was
raising them.
Well, raising them and also giving them critical thinking. That was the crucial thing.
Giving them critical thinking. Yes,
right.
If I teach a man to draw, I'm teaching him to think for himself. I'm teaching him to see for himself.
Absolutely.
And then you've got a live wire.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, good. Very good. Very good. Yes. Yes.
May I make a very brief comment on the notion of imperfection from a personal experience I had not so very long ago in London, dinner with Sir Michael Pepper, who is a man who is well known for the work he's done on quantum tunneling, a man in his 80s, a distinguished scientist. And I turned to him as he was sitting next to me. I said, "What one thing can you tell me about quantum that every layman should know?" And he responded by saying, in this wonderful voice, "Uncertainty, like life itself."
Right. Very good. Very good. Yes. 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 Excellent. That's great.
But I think that the aspects of the working man that Ruskin never worked like that. He really didn't know what the guy did, but what he produced, he saw it through what he produced. When it was in the Renaissance, it was all something that was very perfect, and the Gothic, it wasn't perfect. I think he sees it not exactly by what the workers are, how they work, but he presumes it by what they draw, the way they draw.
And what he sees in, for example, Victorian furniture.
And also, I only know
that wonderful painting by Holman Hunt, The Awakening Conscience.
Yes.
And he talks about the fatal newness of the furniture, and it is all You know, it's carved to rote, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And he hated that. Yeah. No, that's great.
Emma, before we
Yeah.
end today, because we're coming close
Yes.
to the end of our time, can we read 12 just to finish?
Yes. Can we read? Yes. Maybe
Victoria was what was going to.
Victoria. Yes, please.
Thank you. Wait, where are we now?
12.
12.
Paragraph 12.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. 1 second. I need to.
This is an incredible paragraph.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
I'm forewarned.
Well,
Thank you.
it also addresses some of the things that we were just now talking about.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And observe, you are to put to stern choice in this matter. You must either make a tool of the creature or a man of him. You cannot make both. Men were not intended to work with the accuracy of tools, to be precise and perfect in all their actions. If you will have that precision out of them and make their fingers measure degrees like cogwheels and their arms strike curves like compasses, you must unhumanize them. All the energy of their spirits must be given to make cogs and compasses of themselves. All their attention and strength must go to the accomplishment of the mean act. The eye of the soul must be bent upon the finger point, and the soul's force must fill all the invisible nerves that guide it 10 hours a day, that it may not err from its steely precision. And so soul and sight be worn away, and the whole human being be lost at last. A heap of sawdust, so far as its intellectual work in this world is concerned, saved only by its heart, which cannot go into the form of cogs and compasses, but expands after the 10 hours are over into fireside humanity. On the other hand, if you will make a man of the working creature, you cannot make him a tool. Let him but begin to imagine, to think, to try to do anything worth doing, and the engine-turned precision is lost at once. Out come all his roughness, all his dullness, all his incapability. Shame upon shame, failure upon failure, pause after pause, but out comes the whole majesty of him also. And we know the height of it only when we see the clouds settling upon him. And whether the clouds be bright or dark, there will be transfiguration behind and within them.
Simply glorious.
Great paragraph.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Gosh.
Perhaps we can conclude with paragraph 13, and Nicholas, perhaps you can read paragraph 13.
Oh gosh, right. Okay, well, that's addressing something that I was saying a moment ago.
So go on. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No. Okay, I will read it, and please accept my apologies, everybody, for just coming in for the last 15 minutes. I just really wanted to be part of this, and there were things preying on my time earlier. Forgive me. I'll read this paragraph. And now, reader, look round this English room of yours, about which you've been proud so often because the work of it was so good and strong, and the ornaments of it so finished. Examine again all those accurate mouldings and perfect polishings and unerring adjustments of the seasoned wood and tempered steel. Many a time you have exulted over them and thought how great England was because her slightest work was done so thoroughly. Alas, if read rightly, these perfectnesses are signs of a slavery in our England 1,000 times more bitter and more degrading than that of the scourged African or helot Greek. Men may be beaten, chained, tormented, yoked like cattle, slaughtered like summer flies, and yet remain in one sense, and the best sense, free. But to smother their souls within them, to blight and hew into rotting pollards the suckling branches of their human intelligence, to make the flesh and skin, which after the worm's work on it is to see God, into leathern thongs to yoke machinery with, this is to be slave masters indeed. and there might be more freedom in England, though her feudal lords' lightest words were worth men's lives, and though the blood of the vexed husbandman dropped in the furrows of her fields, than there is, while the animation of her multitudes is sent like fuel to feed the factory's smoke, and the strength of them is given daily to be wasted into the fineness of a web, or racked into the exactness of a line.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Bravo.
That's
bravo.
wonderful.
Bravo.
Wonderful. And
Well,
this
Well
is
done,
Yes,
yes.
Come on.
my
You must
passions.
read. You must
Wow.
read and record all of Ruskin for me.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. My
Beautifully done.
passions get the better of me with that particular passage
Oh,
because
yes,
I've read
no,
it
indeed.
a few times and used it in lectures. So forgive me, but I just think this is where he really makes the point so well
Yes.
through poetry. And I'm really interested in the poetry of it. So may I just single out a couple of things that really strike me? I know that we're running out of time, but there's that fantastic sentence, men may be beaten, chained, tormented, and so on. But also, and then this horrific horror movie idea that the skin of human beings
Yes.
is being used to yoke the machinery. This is brilliant because in the cotton factories of Manchester, the thongs that were used to connect one wheel of the machinery to another wheel were made of leather, of course. And so this is skin that is being used to yoke the machinery. It's just breathtaking. But forgive me, this is just a last bit, the last sentence actually. While the animation of her multitudes is sent like fuel to feed the factory's smoke. And you have this image of the horrific sight of Manchester or another industrial city with the smoke pouring out of numerous chimneys. Stoke-on-Trent in England would be another example. At a time when people in Manchester were living in basements alongside the canal, which would flood, and they would be living knee-deep in water. Sorry, this is just Ruskin, I know, shared this absolute horror of the life of the factory workers at that time. And that passage was one of those, wasn't it, that led later to the factory laws towards the end of the 19th century.
And in the words of another poet, another one condemned the tendencies of the middle and the upper classes to oppress the others. When Blake said, I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry every blackening roof appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlots curse, blasts with plague the new infant's newborn tear, or newborn infant's tear, and blights with plague the marriage hearse.
Thank
Bravo.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Bernard. That's absolutely terrific. Terrific
Yes.
analogy as well.
Right.
And extraordinary to think that Ruskin could not have known that.
No, of course not. Yeah, certainly.
But it's making exactly the same sort of point, isn't it? Mind-forged manacles,
Yes.
and chartered streets. This is something that, well, it's rather odd for him to say that about London, because actually London isn't a very good example of a chartered city. New York would be a better example, but he wouldn't have known about that either. So there we are.
But that particular phrase, the chartered Thames, that the river itself is chartered.
Yes, very good. Very good. Yeah.
So, friends, as we finish this is truly, and it has been brought out in our discussion, one of the greatest of Ruskin's passages. And we haven't even got to changefulness yet. Emma,
No.
what do you think we should do for the next meeting? Maybe we should have 2 more meetings.
If you want to, if you want to,
Yeah.
I'm
We'll have to see what we
would
can
be happy to.
organize. Yeah.
We'll organize with Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yes, Gabriel will decide.
Yeah.
Well, a humble, not so humble suggestion that we should have 2 more sessions. Gabriel and Emma can work it out and then send us notices about what we're to do for next week.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
next week we were going to go on to finish starting with paragraph 41.
That's
But,
right.
Emma and I can go back to committee and if
Okay.
you're willing to add a session. It's interesting. I thought once we put this together, I thought it doesn't break well into 2 sessions. It really should be 3. So maybe that was pressure.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
We'll
Emma,
organize.
thank you so much.
Thank you all. It
Thank
was
you, Emma.
really
Thank you.
a wonderful session.
one.
Thank you very much.
We'll send notices out about the readings for next week,
Okay.
and we'll see if we can add an additional one.
Please do it as soon as you can. And
Yeah.
thanks to Bernie for the Blake. My thinking on this as another piece of poetry was how wonderful all of this is as prose. And so again, from Wordsworth and the Daffodils, and my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. That is the joy of reading Ruskin at his best.
Yeah, indeed.
Very good.
Dancing with the daffodil.
Inspiring, really.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. Have a great Sunday.
Right.
And
Thanks, Emma.
Saturday
Thank
for
you.
you, Saturday. And
Emma,
bye-bye.
I'll send you an email. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Emma, thank
Bye.
you, and Miriam as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Miriam.
you
Thank
from
you, Emma.
Italy. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.
Good to see you all. Take care.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you. Bye-bye. Thank you.